you are dealing with a lot of autistic clients, right? And then,
Mm-hmm.
so what is actually autism spectrum disorder, and
Mm-hmm.
how how did it happen? I mean, like, you know, like
Well,
exact
I
questions from
right.
for Mhm,
So right. So in terms of how it happened, no one
mhm,
really knows actually,
yeah,
and
mhm,
this is something that the research and medical professionals, like over the years, I've been working with autistics for 30 years, and to today no one could really pinpoint, you know, why it happened, you know, but we know one thing very, very clearly, that autistics are born with autism spectrum conditions uh,
mhm,
as they were like, were being born. So we're born with it.
mhm,
I mean, to me, it doesn't really matter whether it's autism or ADHD or sensory processing disorders or Down syndrome or like all of these neurological diagnoses,
mhm,
because, you know, what we can't control that. You
yeah,
know, what we're born with,
yeah,
we cannot control that. But I think if we're talking about the adults surrounding that
mhm,
little person who
mhm,
is a little bit different, that's something we can control. I'm talking about our perspectives.
mhm,
So that answers your question about why did autism happen, right?
mhm,
Because so the answer was that no one really knows like
yeah,
how it happened. Um, but secondly, I think that autism is a culture. Autism is a culture that's, it's like when you, let's say your family want to go travel for a holiday in a country
mhm,
like Japan. We were supposed to
mhm,
travel to Japan right now, but you know, we couldn't, of course, with COVID-19. But for months and months, even like 6 months before, we learn as a family about Japan. You know, we want to know places we want to go to. We wanted to learn about the culture. Japanese people are very mindful of, you know, their manners.
yeah,
You know, so we were talking a lot about it as a family during our dinner
mhm,
conversations. So you could think of autism like that too. It's a different culture, right?
mhm,
So if you're traveling to a different country, you want to go there, you're going to learn about that culture and that country. Maybe you learn a little bit of that, about the language, the people, how they live, you know, and then you learn about the static stuff, like how to get to place A to place B, you know.
yeah,
There's so much that you consider when you're going to a place uh, that's foreign to you, right? So that's how I want to tell people about, if when people ask you as a parent, so tell me, what is autism? Don't say autism spectrum disorders. It shouldn't
mhm,
be a medical model or
yeah,
a deficit model, right? So this is the message that I want to clearly um, share to parents here and professionals if they're listening later, that when you describe autism, you can describe it as a culture, one, and it's also, autism is a neurotype, is a type of it's a different type of neural conditions, neural differences, right?
yeah,
Uh, and and our differences really affects the way we communicate with others and the way we make choices in our lives in terms of food we eat and clothing we wear, just our being in general. It's not that it's bad, it's just different. Um, as well as the way we think. We think very, very differently.
mhm,
And I think autistic people, there, as well as other, you know, childhood diagnosis,
mhm,
their brain is atypical because their brain is has adapted to just the
mhm,
changes over the years. the way people expected to communicate, to monitor their world, and to learn as they were little, you know. So I think that's the challenge today. For us as parents, we cannot parent the same way that we were parented before. And when you throw in like an atypical development, whatever that may be, it's really hard to figure it out. It's not intuitive anymore, you know. So those are the two, I think, in terms of how you can explain autism in a simple way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, autism is, for me, like looking at uh, autism spectrum disorder, or like autistic kids, or like reading
Right.
from the literature. What I can conclude is like autism is actually a different operating system.
Right.
Like when we have laptop with Mac and
Right.
Windows, they
That's
have
right.
different operating system, right?
That's right.
That we have to try to learn to understand them.
That's
It's
right.
it's not the operating system uh, who understands the way we work, but we
Right.
try to understand the way they work and the way they think, and all stuff inside their operating system.
That's right. That's right.
So that's uh, sometimes the simplest way I try to,
Yeah.
what happened
Yeah.
to your kid? Like some people say that Christopher,
Uh-huh.
he doesn't look autistic. Okay.
Right.
He doesn't
Right.
seem like, he looks okay. He looks fine. He is fine.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
has an operating
He's
system
fine. He's
that
fine.
we need
Yeah.
to explore. It's not
Yeah.
him to explore us, but we explore his way of
Right.
thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So my being as a, let's say I don't understand about autism. Let's say I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand anything about autism.
Mm-hmm.
So is it actually curable, or is it easy to handle, or what's your opinion? I mean, like, what
It's not
insight can you
curable.
give us? What insight can
I'm,
you give us that
yeah.
people know, right? It's just the
Right.
basic, So is it like
Yeah.
curable? How is it? I mean, what's it?
Well, autism is not curable.
Mm-hmm.
And when you ask an autistic adult like myself, I don't want to be cured. You know, I've lived with it. I love my brain
Mm-hmm.
with like all its differences in how I function today. Some
Mm-hmm.
things are challenging, but I would never ask for a different brain, you know. So I want to tell parents that uh, your child's journey, it's his or her rightfully given journey, that your job is to walk alongside them, not walk ahead of them or behind them, but our job is to walk alongside our children, you
Yeah.
know, special needs or not, right? So I think when our child gets a diagnosis, it's not curable. There is no cure, you know. And I'm talking about like to get rid of, to fix everything that comes with autism itself. You know, primarily people are talking about the self-stim behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Their autism is very complex.
Mm-hmm.
So one child with autism, one adult with autism, you cannot compare one person to another, right? So that's why it's called a spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not curable. And if you ask autistic adults, they don't want to be cured. You know, they want to get the right kind of support so they can learn and live their best life. You know, what that means for each person is different. You know, I know autistic adults who would say, I don't want to get married. You know, I don't need like a lot of friends because I have two friends. You know, I love my routine. I love to do stuff by myself. Some of them are quite accomplished. You know, I'm not talking about their verbal abilities, right? And then we have people who are needing more support, more complex support, because maybe they communicate with an AAC device, or they communicate in a much different way than neurotypicals, right? But it doesn't mean that they don't have the right to live their lives.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They are harder to figure out, of course. Yeah, so I think it's not really possible to get rid of it. There's no quick fix. You know, so it's just we're just people who need different things, and you know, we function differently, just like everyone else, right? Yeah, when you think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very interesting though.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people also like asking about the level of severity. How severe is that? I mean, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this person, your child is okay. Your child is mild. Isn't
Mm-hmm.
such thing like that? Like, not labeling, maybe like categorizing. You know,
Yeah,
people.
so you're talking about functional labels. Functional
Label.
labels are
Mhm.
very, very damaging, I think,
Okay.
especially for people who cannot speak for themselves. And like, imagine if people are talking about you when you're in the same room and you can hear,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I learned how to cut hair, um, and I cut my husband's hair. And the first time I did it, it didn't go. It could be much worse, but it didn't go. It wasn't perfect, right? So, like, my husband's family was like talking about it on social media, and you know, when they were doing like Facebook stuff, but they were like, "Oh, did you look at the back of your hair, or back of your head?" And I'm like, "I'm right here. I got his hair," you know? So it was, of course, it was for a good laugh. But when you grow up and your parents are always thinking of you as there's something wrong with you, you
Mhm.
know, and you need to be fixed, right?
Yeah.
Because this diagnosis was very much defined as a medical model, deficit model. And so it's not entirely like the parents' fault, but
Mhm.
parents were brainwashed from
Yeah.
day one, the moment that they received that diagnosis, right?
Okay.
So the functioning labels doesn't help, actually. It doesn't help us parents to educate other people who don't
Yeah.
know anything about autism. You know, so if you say, my child is high functioning, what does that mean? You know, because a high functioning adult can barely survive. You know, a high functioning adult can very much fight with depression every day. They have to take medication. They have rigidity in such a way that they cannot get a job.
Mhm.
You know, they feel very, very isolated. So that label doesn't really help
I know. Yeah.
us to describe, to educate others. It doesn't help us to describe our child to teachers, to our speech therapists. So what I recommend for parents is be specific. So you might
Mhm.
say, you know, my child is a very, very happy boy.
Mhm.
He's still learning to connect with other people. You know, this is how he communicates. These are examples of things that he says. So you want to describe your child in a more specific way, and that's helpful to whoever you talk about, right?
Yeah.
And I think I would say for people who don't know much about, you know, children's diagnosis and things like that, when you say, "Oh, my child is autistic," you know, and it's like bad news. It's
Yeah.
not bad news, but
It's
it's
like
a
a
very,
stigma.
yeah, yeah, it's a very uncomfortable
Yeah.
situation, right? So it's really up to us as parents to really project what our kids is all about. It's up to us to put a smile on our face and say, look, my kid is different. Let me tell you what autism is. Let me
Yeah.
tell you his autism differences, you know, what he's really, really good at, and so on. So this is, I think, a very important message for me to tell to parents. Don't be afraid, because when you're afraid, your child becomes afraid, because your child senses your trauma. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a trauma. And I think this problem we're facing today in terms of autism employment, which is what our nonprofit, I created a nonprofit last year, Autism Career Pathways, to figure out autism employment. And it's a mess. We have a big problem because the stigma is huge, even here in America, and I'm sure in your country also, because when people think about, oh, an autistic person, or like a person with mental illness, a nonverbal person, it means that we can't do much. You know, it means that we're a charity case, you know, and that kind of language and narrative, it's really damaging, you know. So for parents here, please don't say to people, my child is high functioning, my child is low functioning. To me, as a clinician, it doesn't matter when a parent want me to take them as a client. For most people to kind of tell me, oh, would you work with my child because he's like sort of high functioning? And to me, it doesn't matter, because, for example, people who are nonverbal, they are easier to work with sometimes, a lot of times, because they haven't figured out how to use verbal language to control and interaction, you know. So it really doesn't matter. People who are not using verbal channel to communicate, a lot of times they're very in tune and they're already very communicative in their own ways, you know. So that's my explanation for functioning labels. So are we gonna talk about, so there's some questions here.
Yeah, there's a question here.
So do you want to do it at the end, or
it's okay, we can answer now.
okay?
So this is actually my high school friend.
Mm-hmm.
How do you tell if somebody has an autism? Maybe like the signs or the like early symptoms. After that, maybe you can also try to introduce us with the term of early intervention. Go ahead, May.
Sure. So autism is a neurotype, meaning that we are affected, we're different in, I think, 3 ways. One is that the sensory processing is different.
Okay.
So it means that people with autism can be different, like in terms of they can be hypersensitive to stimuli or hyposensitive to stimuli, right? So I'll give you an example. For me, I'm very hypersensitive to noise. So it's not necessarily like hearing people talk. So, but I know with my son, it's the tone of voice from people that it's a trigger for him, right? So if you speak in a very louder, like a little bit louder, it's very sensitive to him. It's a trigger for him. So for me, it's like the sounds of plates, but like banging together. If it's like a buzzing sound, like from the light, from flies, you know, it really bothers me. When I was pregnant, there was a fly in our room, and I told my husband, you go catch the fly, because, and then I was sobbing, I was in tears, you know, I had a meltdown, you know. So my family makes fun of me because I'm quirky this way. I'm also very sensitive to smell. So it's kind of strange. I can eat strawberries and popcorn, but I cannot stand the smell of them. So I always have to pick up the containers, the bowls, and put it away from me, because the smell really it's a trigger for me, you know. So that's called hypersensitivity to sounds and certain smells, right? So I'm also tactile defensive. So that means like when it comes to tags and clothing, the way clothing feels on my body, if it's rough, I can't wear it. I have asked strangers to cut my tag at the airport because it really bothers me. Like, and he was a shopkeeper too, so it was a guy. Like, do you have scissors? Can you please cut my tag? So we are like that, you know, we're quirky like that. But of course, for me, I know how to fix it. Okay. So this also answers for some of your followers who have parents of younger kids. We have to show our kids how to problem solve it. We cannot fix it for them, but you have to show them how to problem solve it. So for my son, he also doesn't like dirty things, anything dirty. So he's also tactile defensive that way. And he's also he's a sensory eater. So, but we worked together to push through it. So for washing dishes, you know, he puts on his gloves and it's still a work in progress, you know, so until you feel like, okay, I can handle this. It's not a problem anymore. Yeah, it is still a problem, but you can handle it. That's the difference, right? So the sensory profile is different, of course, and it affects the way we live our lives. So I gave you some example. And also because the sensory profile is different, it also affects our social desire and the way we socialize with people. So that is a common one related to autism itself. And it's something that I think as parents, we feel very, very sad about, because we always think, for neurotypical parents, oh, I want my child to have friends. But if you ask me and ask my kid, I think we of course enjoy being with family members and other people, but it's not really something necessarily that we must have. Does that make sense? Yeah. So for example, I like hanging out with people, especially if people share my topic of interest. So I'm all for it. You know, I could do that. I can even do presentation when it comes to autism, psychology, and sports. You know, that's my obsession. So, but I cannot sustain it. It's very tiring for me. Yeah. You know, the social stuff. So, my son was also like that. Like every year he just has the same few people for birthday parties, for example. You know, so I'm very much like him in that we really value certain people because we can see ourselves like pushing ourselves to hang out with them more. But after that, we need a break. You know, so our battery for social stuff, we cannot. Yeah, it needs to be recharged, right? So that's the difference. And so you might see little kids, they want to play a little bit and then they need a break, and that's fine. So don't force it for them, don't make it fake, because if as a parent you continue to tell, oh, say this, do this, say this, that's not nurturing enjoyment. You know, they have to find the value of being with a friend, and it's going to be a long process. So that's another message that I have for parents here. Okay, so I have to focus on because the question was like, how do you know when you're autistic? So we talk about sensory differences, we talk about social differences, and also the third one is the way we process information, the way our thinking, the way we think is very different. So autistic people are born with a very strong connection to the static part of the brain. right?
Okay.
Yes. So anything that's static related in terms of knowledge accumulation, they're usually very, very good at it, I would say, most of the time. So we're talking about kids who, before they were able to communicate verbally, they were able to name alphabets, you know, they were able to read, like very, very early on, they were hyperlexic, for example. Not all kids are like that. Or by the time you start ABA, for example, that is the method that seems to be working very, very quickly to change their behavior and for them to learn skills,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that is the strength of the brain to begin with. So
Yeah.
it's over connected to the static part of the brain. But what we're lacking is the ability to process information. So if we're talking about emotional intelligence, you know, all the executive functioning skills, you know, being able to make decisions, uh, be able to self-regulate, be able to be flexible, like all this stuff. In order to be able to do that, one, you have to be able to learn all that through a parent, a
Mm-hmm.
confident parent who can guide you, right? So that's the foundation, really, that attachment, mutual engagement. So then it over time it develops into social referencing and all the stuff that people say eye contact, but it's not really eye contact. um,
I agree.
so that so autistic people, the way they make sense of the world, the way they explore the world, it's different than neurotypical kids. So
Yeah.
some people see the world in words, some people see the world, autistic people see the world in patterns,
Mm-hmm.
numbers, like I see how things fit visually.
Mm-hmm.
Like I will see, it's kind of hard to describe, but it helps me to make sense, and
Yeah.
it helps me to be able to organize my thoughts
Mm-hmm.
very well. So that is our strength, actually, to be able to like process and understand the world in a different way, right? Some people here they have a perfect pitch, they're into rhythm, you know. So it's just different the way they make sense of the world, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think there is a place definitely for those kind of strengths, and that turns into abilities later, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the question about like how do you know as an adult when you're autistic, well, for a lot of the parents, as they go through their children's assessment and they fill out the application, they realize, oh my God, this is just like my grandfather, or this is just like me, you know. And that's usually how it started. Like it was very similar for me also. So if there are other women here who are interested in getting a diagnosis, I found a great clinician who is autistic herself, and she's great, you know. So so I don't know if that answers there's that question, like how do
Yeah.
you know, how do you tell, right?
Uh,
Right.
yeah, that's the question of Wulan. Well,
Uh-huh.
she has a little daughter actually, just
Uh-huh. Right.
slightly just 1 year different to Christopher actually. Maybe she was asking about the early symptoms of autism.
Mm,
Actually,
yeah.
it's very basic for children. It's like
Mm,
when they are not pointing, they are not
right.
eye contact, right? I mean, like
Right.
they are doing repetitive things like jumping
Yes.
nonstop, and
Yeah.
then the major thing is actually the pointing part because
Mm,
when a kid, when a toddler is like 1 year old, they like to point things, right?
yeah.
That's what I experienced with Christopher actually. So like
Right.
he's not pointing at all. He's not trying
Mm-hmm.
to show his interest, or he's not
Mm-hmm.
trying to drag our attention to see what interests him. So
Yeah.
that's the red flag that I experienced
Yeah.
actually as a little kid. So
Yeah.
and also there's a head banging and the steaming.
Mm-hmm.
I ask about you about head banging later on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I have another question actually. So
Sure.
that you are a neurodivergent yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? I mean,
So the
what?
difference between, so the term neurodiversity, I think that has been around, it's fairly recent, the term neurodivergent and neurodiversity.
Is it
So
like you
a
just get
neurodiverse,
diagnosed recently, or?
yeah, so neurodiversity means actually is that like every person's brain is a
Mhm,
little bit different than another person's brain. You know, there are differences in
mhm.
everyone's brain.
Okay.
That's that's what it means, neurodiverse, right?
Okay.
So the correct term is actually neurodivergent. That's
Neurodivergent.
the yeah. So neurodivergent means that there is an anomaly, an
Mhm,
atypicalness uh, from a specific brain. So whether it's ADHD, whether it's Down syndrome,
yeah.
whether it's dyslexia, like all these like childhood diagnoses. So that
Mhm.
means that your child is a neurodivergent. I am a neurodivergent, right?
Okay.
So yeah, so that's what it means. So I think the correct term is like neurodivergent instead
Neuro.
of neurodiverse, because neurodiverse is everyone. Like,
Okay.
right,
So
right.
is it?
Like every person is a
Yeah.
neurodiverse. Yeah. No one brain. It's like everyone has different personalities. Your imprint is different. Your brain
Yeah.
imprint is different, right? Yeah,
So actually,
exactly.
like after my son is getting his diagnosis, I
Mm-hmm.
started to think to ask myself, I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm also autistic. You know,
Mm. Yes,
it's like, is it possible to get an adult getting assessed for that? I mean, like,
absolutely. Yeah, I just did that. I just did
okay,
that
it's
recently.
really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I think it's why should we get a diagnosis as an adult? Of course, because the number one reason is for you to be able to understand yourself.
Yes.
And with that understanding comes, I think, feeling of peace and
Mhm.
also uh, just being able to live your life
Yes.
as a true you. That's how I feel,
Yes.
right? To understand why I get so cranky, why certain things are hard for me,
Yes.
why I don't have too many friends
Yes.
that I would, like why, and why growing up, like I had learning challenges, like I wasn't able to read this at the way it was taught to me, at school. And my mom had to sit with me after school every day to teach me how to read. And math was the same. So now I know they're actually named for all these difficulties, right? So dyscalculia is a term for number dyslexia, which I have.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
didn't know that, but that's very typical actually for autistic girls. So I had very poor motor planning, so I fell down a lot. It's like even as adults, like I would just every so often I would fall down. I still cannot ride a bike, for example. But in Asia, little girls were very protected
Yeah.
also, so they were like it's different than boys, and which is why it's really hard as a woman to get a diagnosis, because all of the tests were created for autistic males, because we have more males uh, compared to females,
Yeah.
autistic people, right? But I think that if you're wondering, you can certainly get assessed.
Yeah.
But I think to me, it's just that like I wanna be able to be the best guide for myself, but also for my son, so that uh, we can talk about it, we can support each other, because
Yeah.
we are a little bit different. So I think there's no shame. um, you can, if you feel like you are, it's a self-diagnosis, it's also fine. You don't have to
You
like
know,
yeah, it doesn't really, it's really how you live your life, really.
Mhm.
Um,
And sometimes I think that every one of us is actually has that, autistic side in our brain. Like uh, having
yeah, but
like,
that is not true
yeah,
though. Yeah, so you don't want to say that to people because to say that everyone is a little bit autistic, that's a trigger for a lot of autistic adults, because
okay,
especially if they have struggled all their lives and they
yeah,
still struggle, that's the difference.
yeah,
That's the difference. Like the same one, people say, oh, the topic of masking, like paketopeng,
yeah,
like, oh, everybody does that, and but it's not like for autistics, they don't have a choice. For neurotypicals, they choose to pretend, right?
yeah,
Like, for example, oh, your mother-in-law is coming, you have to clean the house, you have to like make sure you don't talk about certain topics that she's sensitive about. You're pretending for your
yeah,
mother-in-law so you don't get into trouble, right? but but you make a conscious choice to do that.
mhm,
When for autistic kids and autistic people, they don't have a choice, because they're being taught from since they were little kids that your standards is wrong. So
yeah,
you need to change your behavior to fit into this world, of neurotypicals.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So they don't have a choice. Ever since they were little, they were just thinking, okay, my way is wrong. So I have to stop being me. And that's really, really bad. So for girls, it's a bit different. So for women, so typically, uh, women are, because uh, I think the social expectations of like growing up as a little girl is very different. So typically, so research has shown that autistic women, for example, they tend to be, usually they're more verbal, like me. We
yeah,
just like to talk, but we
yeah,
talk nonstop. But if you take away my topic of interest, it's very awkward for me.
mm,
But we know how to hide behind people. So with my friend Becky, I was telling her, oh, you just do the talking, I'll just go hide behind you and I can check out. Like, so as she was talking with her friends, I would just be quiet and smile. So we also know how to do the like facial expressions, how to smile, although we actually don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? And that's the best way that I can describe it. Like, for example, when I work in China, like the language is different and I have very little Mandarin. So after a whole full day of presenting, my brain is very, very tired. So when we go out to dinner, my host would take me out to dinner. I don't have the battery power anymore to monitor the Mandarin conversation,
mm,
because my brain is just tired. But I would pay attention to people's gestures and facial expressions, because a lot of times that gives me clues,
yeah,
right? But there will be a point during that dinner that I'm just done. I just want to eat my dinner and don't. So
yeah,
if people want to talk to me, they have to call my name and they have to like slow down and like just really work hard to help me understand. That is exactly the best way I can describe how your kids feel.
okay,
Um, you know what I mean?
yeah.
So I think I don't know if I'm digressing or not, but
Oh, yeah.
what was the question again?
Oh, that's true. I agree.
Yeah.
So, so it is very interesting because you are also like you are a therapist, you are a
Hmm.
behaviorist, you have psychology background,
Hmm.
psychology degree background, and
Right.
also you are also like Aspergers yourself, which is like that's one of the uh, one of the class of autism spectrum disorder before.
Yeah,
Like,
but no more. It's
yeah,
actually
no
not
more.
correct. No
And
more.
so
They
like
take that out. Right.
after the DSM-5, if we are talking about the the
Yeah.
medical, so there's
Right.
no more about Aspergers or like that. So they just call it in general
Autism. Right. That's
spectrum
right.
because it's a spectrum.
That's right.
So talking about autism spectrum disorder, uh,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes most people they don't understand about meltdown,
Right.
tantrum, stimming,
Right.
self-regulation. What
Right.
is that? Sometimes they don't understand how a kid dealing with meltdown, and then they call it
Mm-hmm.
as a tantrum, and then they just punish them. So
Yeah.
what's
Well,
your
tantrums are just the way kids protest, right? And actually, it's actually not special needs specific. Like
yeah?
all kids tantrum, they
They
protest.
ask
Like
for something, they don't get
they
it,
don't
and
get it and then protest, they
yeah,
cry, they make, yeah, they make sounds, that's
yeah,
very, very common. So
yeah,
nothing to worry about. You just,
yeah,
as parents, you have to, like, if you already say no, if you already tell them 5 minutes and they're complaining, you just work through it, right? Don't give in, just work through it, because that's how your kids learn.
yeah.
But so meltdowns are a little bit different, and adults
Mhm.
also experience meltdown. So meltdown happens because of the masking or the pretending. This is why adults have meltdowns,
Yeah,
because as autistics, when we have to work at the office, when we have to talk to people, when we have to be flexible, that takes a lot of your battery power,
mhm.
and when you have to juggle so many things, it's like, if you're a computer, you're overheating.
Yeah.
Your machine is overheating because you just keep pushing and have so many things open. That's
That
a
makes the
good.
steaming and the head banging thing. You think like
No, but that's the stim. That's, but it's, meltdowns happens because of an accumulation of the
okay, yeah,
feeling of overwhelm, so then boom, like one day it just explodes,
hmm,
right? So that's a meltdown. And it happens usually for kids in public places, because it's just, they try to do their best to keep it together, but they just can't hold it together, right?
hmm,
So for kids who can go to school, but on weekends they have it like that, they're done, they have the meltdowns on the weekend, because during the weekdays at school they mask, they try to
yeah,
control their stimming, they try to pay attention. It's really, really hard. It's really,
yeah,
really hard, right? So that's a meltdown. And kids and adults, actually anyone, can have a meltdown when you think
yeah,
about it, right? It's not just autism specific, right? So a shutdown is where people just have to stop everything and they disconnect from the world for a period of time to just, but a meltdown has to happen,
yeah,
right? It's like when you cook with a pressure cooker, you have to
yeah,
let the steam out.
yes,
It's actually a very important process. There's just nothing you can do to stop it, so you just wait, you just love your child or love your family member, you understand, and do what you can so that the meltdown doesn't have to happen, right? So my husband's very good.
melt
Yeah.
is not indisciplined condition for a kid, right? It's
You
just
can't, it needs to happen.
to happen. It
It
has
needs
to
to happen.
happen.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so your family, of course, like my husband, he checks my schedule. And at the beginning of this week, he looked at my schedule, was like, uh-oh,
Okay.
this is really gonna be a tough week for you. So usually your loved ones are really good at helping you to kind of, like, he will force me to, like, he'll take my hand and lock me in the bedroom to take a nap or just to decompress. So because otherwise I might have a meltdown, and it's not pretty, so that is something. I think the self-care is very important. Autistic kids, they're not very good at knowing the signs in themselves, like, okay, I'm done, Like, I just don't have it anymore in me to do what you want me to do or what I'm supposed to be doing, you know. So it's really important for parents to see the sign and to make sure that you have a time every day where there's no expectations, that they can just, that your kid just can be just like play with sand, go outside, you know, take them out to the park where there's no expectations. Like, don't talk to them, don't ask any questions, they're done, you know. And actually, yeah. So the other thing I want to tell the adults here, so when, as adults, when we have a hard time at work and you come home from work, you know, you just know, oh, such a tough day, lots of meetings at that, you know, whatever. What do? We reward ourselves. We turn the TV on, you know, maybe we go to exercise, you know, we look at our phone, we eat the foods and drink that we like. We reward ourselves after a hard day. That's not the case for our kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you think about it like that. Yeah. So I think somebody had a question about support group.
Roughly have like 6 more minutes. Oh my God, time
Yeah,
flies.
I
Like,
know.
so there's a question here from Olive Teresa from Indonesia.
Uh-huh.
I'm a mom of a 4-year-old autistic boy.
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah.
are do you know any mom support group for autism in Indonesia,
Um,
Jakarta?
I
Yeah.
don't, but I'm also very scared about the support groups
Uh-huh.
and the quality of the support groups and what professionals are teaching
Yeah.
parents. I'm actually
Maybe if
worried
you
about that.
mom support group, which is like mom with kids with special needs, maybe I can try to connect with you. Like, I have
Mm-hmm.
some friends, and also like, maybe the ASD career pathways can also help the need of Olive Teresa over here. That's actually my last question, Macy, about
Mm-hmm.
career pathways. You have that kind of website, that tools. What is that? If you can share to us, like, briefly.
So I'm actually I have projects in terms of trying to build a better parent training curriculum,
Okay.
but it's very early, so I
Okay.
can't really talk about much about it
Okay.
yet. But I think at this point, if there are parents who wants to work with our clinic, because my husband and I are parent coaches,
Yeah.
um, and we work with parents from all over the world. So the way we do it, parents send us video clips a few times a month, and we actually do video reviews.
Mhm.
So it's really at our clinic, we want to really empower parents and help parents to be in the driver's seat, you know. So that's something that I feel for our family, because my husband and I are a little bit more equipped. We still don't have all of the answers, but
Okay.
we were less afraid to
Yeah.
begin this journey, right? Trying to figure it
Even
out.
the bicycle balance. That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It actually, all the changes that we want, positive changes we want to happen for our kids and our family, therapists cannot teach that, because they were
Yeah.
trained to make behavioral changes, and the way they view our kids and autistics in general, it's a deficit model,
Yeah.
and we don't really have anything. I think it's slowly changing, but we don't have anything.
Okay.
um you know, so if I think that if you're in Indonesia, our clinic there, the program that you know, our clinicians are trained in is called relationship development intervention. So you can work with our clinician there. She's great. Her name is February. If you want to work with us remotely, we can certainly do that too.
Mhm.
Sometimes I do online parent training classes, so it's 6 online classes, and we share our videos, so it makes it really fun, and it's not so lonely to see,
Very
like, to see, oh,
inspiring.
I'm not
Very
the only
motivating.
one who don't know how to do this. I'm not the only one feeling frustrated. So it's really fun to do it like that. So to do an online parent training series, it's usually a group of 8 families, and the
Oh, I
fathers,
enjoy that.
yeah, so the fathers have to join as
Yeah,
well.
sure.
Yes,
Sure.
exactly,
The whole
exactly.
family
So
system, family is the biggest support group, the
that's
first and
right.
biggest support group for let's say a kid with autism, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Uh, oh, I really wish I could talk to you like for 5 hours.
Yeah, I know. I know. We could do it
The
again.
autism world is a very interesting
Uh-huh.
discussion. Like we need to
Yeah.
understand more about them, you
Hmm.
know. But because we are only limited to 1 hour, oh, I feel so bad. I mean, like, oh, I really want to continue. Maybe next session we will have a more specific topic with Macy later on.
Yeah, yeah. So people
There's
people
lots of
can
things
uh-huh.
we want to know from this amazing lady.
Yeah.
So
Well,
before
thank
the
you.
countdown begins from Instagram, I really would like to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome. My
7 in the
pleasure.
morning in San Francisco, I know. Thank you for making time to share with us, to share the positivity, to share the positive energy, and then to create a better understanding about autism to all
Yes.
over the world, to us, to like not even parents, to like every one of us. Thank you so much, Macy, for your
You're
time,
welcome. Yeah.
for
Thank
your
you for having me
insight.
today.
Yeah, and then thank you for those who joined us. I'm sorry if
Right.
I cannot really like say hi to you one by one, but I really appreciate your time. So if you have questions, you can connect with Macy
That's
directly.
right.
You can connect with me.
Hmm.
With me, we can make a very good and strong support group for autism parents, and
Hmm.
then we
Yeah.
can create a better world. And then it's
Yes,
especially
we have to do that. Yeah.
autism.
Exactly.
Yeah. And not to forget, next week, Brunch at Christopher's will be having a very lovely dad, an autism dad from Pennsylvania. He will
Nice.
share his love and joy about being an autism dad to his lovely son. So stay tuned for next week. Also, Macy, I know you know the person. He is Jamil from
Oh,
Pennsylvania.
Jamil. Yeah, I love him. Yeah, we have projects that we're going to be doing together. Yeah.
Excited. So hopefully you can join me also next week. So my friends, thank you so much for stopping by, for listening. The countdown begins now from Instagram. Macy, I wish you a very, very good day, a very good summer.
You
Take
too.
care. Be healthy. Thank you so much. God bless you. And I really wish to talk to you again in another
Yeah, we'll
idea.
do it again. We'll do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you so
anytime.
much.
All
You
right.
take care,
Take
everybody.
care. Bye,
Okay.
guys. Bye bye.